3:14 a.m. in an industrial park somewhere off the interstate. No streetlights working right, no cameras that matter. A man in gloves pops the frame around the wheel well, finds the OBD port, the diagnostic socket every mechanic plugs into to read engine codes, and connects a tablet. No glass breaks, no alarm sounds. 28 seconds later, the Hellcat's computer thinks this man is the owner. It hands over control the same way it would to a valet. Most people think they know what happens next. They're wrong. This isn't a heist, it's a supply chain solution. He's not stealing a car, he's stealing $150,000, and the car is just the box it's shipped in. This Hellcat rolled off the lot at $90,000. By sunrise, the engine, the wheels, the brakes, the badge, every piece of it sold off separate adds up to 60 grand more than the whole car was ever worth. But the guy with the tablet isn't the one you should be worried about. It's whoever buys that engine 6 weeks from now, bolts it into a driveway project car, and has no idea they just bought a ghost. We'll get to who that person is. Stripped down in a bay 2 hours from now, this car is worth more than it was sitting whole in a driveway at 3:13 a.m. That's the paradox nobody selling you a Hellcat ever mentions. Start thinking about it as inventory instead of a car, and the man with the tablet stops looking like a thief. He's a distributor, and he already knows his margins before he's even in the driver's seat. That's the answer to the question everyone's asking. It's just not the answer anyone expects. Here's what most people assume happens next: joyridden and dumped. Loaded on a container ship out of Long Beach and sold overseas for triple sticker. Cut up fast at a chop shop with cash changing hands by sunrise. All three happen. None of it's wrong. It's just not the whole picture, and it's not even the important part. Here's what the surface answer doesn't explain. Hellcats get stolen at rates that outpace almost every other high-value car category, and they come back whole at rates that lag behind almost every other high-value car category. If joyriding and export were the real story, you'd expect a decent chunk of these cars to turn up abandoned, intact, 3 counties over. That's not what the recovery numbers show. And there's a reason these cars don't come back easy. It traces back to a $20 hardware flaw sitting behind the headlight of every one of these cars, a flaw Dodge can't patch with a software update. Fixing it means a recall. We'll get to that part. So here's the real question: where does a $90,000 car go when it doesn't come back as a car at all? Not stripped a little, not missing a stereo and some rims, gone. Vanished into a market that doesn't leave a paper trail. The answer isn't a chop shop working fast and sloppy for quick cash. It's slower than that, and it's more organized than that. The answer's a spreadsheet. Somewhere, someone did the math on a Hellcat before they ever stole one, and the math told them exactly which bolts to loosen first and which ones weren't worth the time. That's the surface answer, and it's where most explanations of Hellcat theft stop. It explains why someone would want the car. It doesn't explain why the car is worth more dead than alive. Here's the part that breaks the model. A Hellcat loses value every day it stays a whole car. Drive it off the lot at $90,000 and it's worth less by the time you're home. 5 years in, a titled Hellcat with miles on it is worth maybe half of sticker. That's just depreciation. Every car does it. Now look at the parts sitting inside that same car. A Redeye crate engine, the supercharged 6.2 that makes 797 horsepower straight from the factory, sells on its own for anywhere from $18,000 to $25,000, depending on the buyer and how fast they need it. The Brembo 6-piston brake calipers, the same ones bolted to the front wheels, go for $2,000 to $4,000 a set. The SRT wide body panels, the fender flares, and the bumper covers that make a Hellcat look like a Hellcat move for another few thousand. The infotainment unit, the screen, and the module behind the dash sells separately too. None of these prices are falling. They're climbing, because demand for Hellcat parts is going up while Dodge stopped building new ones. Run it like a ledger. Redeye crate engine, $22,000 sold. Brembo 6-piston calipers, $3,500 sold. SRT wide body panels, $4,000 gone. Infotainment unit, $900, gone before the car's even cool. Every piece has a buyer lined up before the wrench comes out. This exact math is what a man the police called Hellcat Mike turned into a business. He didn't run a chop shop, he ran what investigators later described as a ghost factory, and it operated for years before anyone caught on. We're going inside that operation, stack it all up: engine, wheels, brakes, interior, body panels, electronics. Add the transmission, the differential, the seats with the SRT stitching, the exhaust. Run the totals and you land somewhere around $150,000 in parts, pulled from a single car that sold new for $90,000. Read that number again. $150,000 out of a car that cost the factory less than that to build, sell, and ship. The car stopped being a car the moment the bay door closed. It became an inventory list. Here's why that distinction matters. A whole car is a liability the second it's stolen. It's got a VIN stamped into the frame, etched into the windshield, printed on a sticker inside the driver's door. That VIN has to be dealt with. The car has to move somewhere, and moving a stolen Hellcat down a highway is a risk every mile it travels. It has to be hidden somewhere, which costs space and costs time. If anyone wants to sell it as a car, it needs a new VIN, forged paperwork, a title that'll survive a police database check. Every single one of those steps is a place where the whole operation can fall apart. Parts don't work like that. A supercharger doesn't have a serial number tied to a police report. A set of Brembo calipers doesn't ping a database when you list it on Facebook Marketplace. A wide body fender doesn't care what car it came off of. These pieces move the same day they come off the car, sold to buyers who are rebuilding their own Hellcats, restoring wrecked ones, or running body shops that don't ask where a fender came from. No VIN, no serial trail, no waiting on a buyer willing to take on the risk of a hot car. Just cash and A for those willing to look the other way. That's the whole shift in one sentence. A car is a liability that decays. A pile of parts is a liquid asset that sells itself. Whoever figured out that math wasn't thinking like a car thief. They were thinking like a parts distributor who happened to source inventory for free. So the money's in the pieces. That still doesn't explain how they get inside the car in 30 seconds. Behind the headlight assembly on a modern Hellcat, there's a hub where multiple CAN bus lines come together, the internal network that lets the car's parts talk to each other. Mechanics call it the star connector because every module in the car reports back through that one point. That's the hub the guy in the industrial park plugged into at 3:14 a.m. Not the engine, not the alarm, the star connector. Think of it like a hotel. The thief isn't kicking down the door to your room. He's walking up to the front desk saying he's the manager and asking for a master key that opens every door in the building. And the desk clerk just hands it over because he asked the right way. Here's the exploit laid out plain. A handheld programmer costing anywhere from $20 to $300 connects to that hub and sends one request: authorize a new key. The network doesn't ask who's holding the device. It just checks whether the device speaks the right language, and if it does, the network says yes. 28 seconds later, the thief's key works exactly like the one in the owner's pocket. No alarm trips because nothing got broken into. No window shattered, no door forced, no wire cut. The car doesn't think it's being stolen. It thinks it's being serviced. There are forums built around this exact exploit. Encrypted chat groups trading firmware updates like software licenses. Handheld programmers shipped in bulk from overseas, model specific, already loaded with codes for whatever Hellcat, Charger, or Challenger you're targeting that week. This isn't a secret anymore. It's a product category. Sit with the numbers for a second. $90,000 for the car, $20 for the tool that gets past everything the manufacturer built to stop it from getting stolen. That's the whole story of modern car security in one comparison. But getting past the lock isn't the last problem the thieves got. There's still a VIN stamped into that frame, and VINs get flagged. Except thieves found a way around that too, and it doesn't involve hiding the car at all. It involves a completely legal business model that makes a stolen Hellcat invisible to every database the FBI's got. That's coming up. So thieves get in for $20 and walk out with $150,000 in parts, like we already broke down. That still leaves one question sitting on the table. Why does the system built to catch this keep failing over and over on a national scale? If you think the theft is the clever part, you're looking at the wrong crime. Meet Hellcat Mike. He didn't just steal cars, he ran a ghost factory, and the case file on him is where this whole thing stops being about a stolen car and starts being about a system with no name for what he built. The system built to answer that question is looking for a car. It's checking a VIN, the 17-digit number stamped in the frame against a national database, flagging it the second it crosses a scanner at a border crossing or a chop shop raid. That system works fine as long as the VIN stays attached to the parts it was born with. Here's how thieves get around that. Take a legitimate VIN plate off a salvage car, one that got totaled in a flood or a wreck and still has clean paperwork, and bolt it onto a stolen chassis. Now the stolen car is wearing a legal identity, or skip the chassis entirely and go straight for the drivetrain, the engine and transmission pulled out of a stolen Hellcat, dropped into a base model Charger with a V6 and a title nobody's ever questioned. The car on paper says V6. The car under the hood says Hellcat. That's not a theory. In May of 2024, investigators in San Antonio raided a property off Bassett Road and arrested a man the case file named Hellcat Mike. His crew stole Hellcats, pulled the drivetrains, and reinstalled them into base model cars that would pass any routine VIN check without raising a flag. The donor cars weren't random. The crew bought salvage-titled Chargers and 300s off insurance auction sites for $2,000–$3,000 apiece. Cars with clean VINs and blown transmissions that had nothing to do with the engine bay. Pull the wrecked V6, drop in the stolen Hellcat drivetrain, bolt the VIN plate back on. Now there's a legal title and a 707 horsepower engine that was sitting in somebody's driveway in Austin 3 weeks earlier. The scale is what turns this from a chop shop story into something else. Court records tied the operation to more than a dozen vehicles run through that same address over the better part of a year, each one worth somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 once the swap was finished and the car went back on the market. Run that math and it's an operation clearing $500,000 without a single car ever crossing a state line or touching an export dock. Here's why that defeats the system built to catch it. Law enforcement databases search for one thing: a specific VIN reported stolen. They're built to flag a car, a whole legal object with one identity. They're not built to flag a Hellcat engine sitting under the hood of a car whose paperwork says it's something else entirely. The engine doesn't have a VIN. The transmission doesn't have a VIN. The only VIN in the whole operation belongs to the base car, and that VIN was never stolen. State it plain. A whole car has a VIN, a pile of parts doesn't, and a drivetrain bolted into a different car's body isn't a whole car anymore, and it isn't quite a pile of parts either. It's something the system has no category for. The database is looking for a car that was stolen. That car doesn't exist anymore. It got split, renamed, and rebuilt into something the paperwork says is legal. There's a piece of this that doesn't happen in a warehouse at all. It happens in a browser, on a laptop, on a site most people have never heard of. Copart, IAAI, the two biggest names in salvage and insurance auctions in the country. Every day, thousands of wrecked cars get sold off by insurance companies that already paid out a claim and don't want the wreck anymore. Flood cars out of Florida, hail-damaged trucks out of Texas, cars with a bent frame from a fender bender that got totaled on paper because the repair cost more than the car was worth. Every one of those cars comes with a salvage title, and every salvage title comes with a VIN that's completely legal, completely clean of any theft flag, and completely legitimate in every database that matters. That title is the product, not the car sitting on the tow yard with water damage up to the dash, the title itself. A stolen Hellcat drivetrain doesn't need a stolen title. It needs any legal title attached to any car with an engine bay the right shape. Buy a wrecked Charger for $4,000 at a Copart auction, and there's the one thing a stolen engine can't get on its own: a paper trail that says it's allowed to exist. Read that again. The crime isn't stealing the title, it's buying it legally at auction for less than the cost of a used couch and building a stolen car's second life on top of it. Go look for yourself. Pull up Copart right now and search salvage Charger. You'll see a car that looks like a crushed soda can, water lines up the dash, a frame bent sideways. To you, that's junk. To a Hellcat crew, that crumpled VIN plate is worth more than its weight in scrap metal. It's the one thing money usually can't buy: a clean record in a police database. This is why VIN checks keep coming back clean on cars that shouldn't be on the road. The system's checking whether the paperwork is real. It's not checking whether the paperwork ever belonged to the metal underneath it. A dealership running a routine title search sees a salvage Charger, rebuilt and re-registered, and has no way to know the engine bay was empty 3 months ago and full of somebody else's stolen Hellcat drivetrain today. The Hellcat from that industrial park isn't gone. It's wearing 100 different names bolted into 100 different cars, running through neighborhoods where nobody's looking for it because nobody knows to look. Whether VIN law can ever catch up to a drivetrain with no identity of its own, that's not a question with a clean answer yet. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns of how these systems actually fail, and drop your take in the comments on whether the law's got a real shot at catching up.